Nice. All right.
I can see better now. I clean my glasses.
Okay. Okay, that's good. Um, so the last point that we had, and it's interesting because I think your what we call the mother poems are really interesting. For our syllabus at the Cape level, we don't have the woman speaks to the man who has employed her son, but that is a CSEC favorite. I actually taught it in my fourth form class before I had this class with you today,
Yeah.
and it's always interesting to see the mother perspective that you put in the poems. So for this last one, we can read I Am Becoming My Mother. Let's see if we can get a student to volunteer the reading for that one.
Okay. And when you, I just say one thing about the woman who speaks to the man employed. It's a very painful poem.
Very.
Merciful is not my personal experience. I'm pray never, never, ever will be. Or anybody, I don't want anybody to ever have that experience. But
Right.
there's a student showed me something about that poem which I hadn't seen. And she said, because of the choice of tense, everything about the poem is written, in a way that says this woman is preparing for what she sees as the inevitable, terrible ending.
Yeah.
But the student said, miss, because it hasn't happened already, there is a chance for redemption. And people often read that poem as, as a sort of fait accompli, is done, just because the lady said, just because she's preparing for the worst, doesn't mean that the worst has to happen. So there's that note of possibility and hope and possibility, which is very important to me in my work. Right. I really write from a place where I want to give people hope and possibility. So even a poem as dark as that,
right?
There's maybe a small possibility that this guy could turn his life around before this bad thing happens.
And I think what is good with that poem too is you start off by saying that she carries hope, and even though she is very direct and she buys the black clothing, because there can't be anything harder than buying funeral clothing for a child that hasn't died yet.
Yes.
And
she just see how his life is going.
Yeah. Right.
But you know what, Simon, it was cultural, whenever I'm teaching the poem, I tell them, because I'm a country girl, that literally my parents would tell me stories that when they had the children that were not hearing, the mother would literally prepare the funeral clothing. So it was a part of the culture, as opposed to now the mothers crying innocence, they would actually prepare. So it's, there's a lot of culture in that poem for me. And I must say, Miss Goodison, every year you can be accredited for some boy. Simon, are you hearing me?
I'm hearing you, but it looks like she's frozen. Everybody has seen her?
Yeah, she looks frozen.
Are you hearing us, Miss Goodison? No, she looks frozen.
She probably sign out and sign in back in.
Xavier can tell you that after I teach that poem every year, there is some parent calling me, thanking me for telling them about the punishment of not obeying your mother. The mother's tears, I always emphasize that. Look at Xavier's face. Every year a parent call and say, thank you for that. I had this rebellious child who's now a saint, because I go into the whole history about the mother crying at the crossroad with her breast and who curse will take you and so on. And, we have the 1 and 2 stories to tell him about people that we know that experience this so-called curse.
And then the students that we have taught in the past who are not even here anymore.
Yes.
I hope she signs back in soon. I hope she don't have no big issue over there. What you guys think of the class so far? You guys enjoying it?
Sir, I was going to say that I could volunteer to read if you're still
I was going to pick you anyway. No, you're my go-to reader in normal class, so why wouldn't I do it now? What's Chadia? Yo, Chadia jealous?
He's your go-to reader.
Chadia easy for jealous?
I can't.
No, she's not jealous, she's agreeing.
I can imagine class with her. I can imagine.
Chadia know. We would tell her to read, and she'd be like, before I read, I want to say something. That would be Chadia. Oh no, let me see if she emailed me or anything. This is taking a while to sign back in. Womp womp. I mean, I'm grateful for the time she already
And you
gave.
know, this is like my, well, why I hear my guy say the three poem name is my favorite poem now, but this poem resonates so well with me because I relate so much to this poem and I was excited to read it. Oh gosh.
I'm becoming my
My
mother,
mother.
as opposed to Mother the Great Stone.
No, they don't do the Great Stone yet.
Oh,
Yes, we
okay.
did, sir. We did that.
Mother the Great Stone. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. No, we did.
We did that.
Why didn't you pick that one? Wasn't that
No,
one?
please, no. I'm
I know. I already picked I Am Becoming My Mother. I know, but what I'm saying is, when we did Mother the Great Stones Got to Move, you guys had a lot of questions. So I'm surprised you guys didn't choose that one. If she comes
Did you
back,
play the song for them, the Night song? Simon, did you play the Night song for them?
no, I didn't.
My mom started singing it because I joined class in the car.
Wait, you're
Yes,
talking the Dan
yes.
Drummond?
Song.
You're talking Dan
No,
Drummond?
Mother the Great Stone.
Oh,
It's a Night song,
Oh, that
especially
one, no, we didn't
country.
play that one. We didn't play
Country
that.
Night. And the significance of the Great Stone
Yeah.
when they sing it in the culture, yes. So it kind of, yeah, I was thinking why Simon wouldn't play that song.
You're right, I should have. I'm a little uptown self.
You're a little
I
what?
was going to say that.
Uptown self.
Move on, Gwe. I want your mother to hear that. With
No,
your
man, I say I
uptown.
don't know the country song them. Oh, she's back.
Okay.
Wait for her to set up the I'll ask to unmute.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we're hearing you now. We're hearing you now.
How is this? Is this better?
We can hear you. We can't see you yet.
Really?
But we're not fussy. You know, you can figure it out. And
I don't know. When I do share screen, it
oh, but you don't have to do the share screen. You don't have to do the share screen.
okay.
I think you just hit. Yeah, there we go.
Good. All right. Sorry, we just had a little trip out there.
That's fine. Miss Dare was saying something. She can go back, and then we're going to I Am Becoming My Mother. Go ahead, Miss Dare. You can repeat it.
I was just briefly saying that every year when I teach The Woman Speaks, I have some parent calling me and thanking me for the poem. Because when I go into the idea of the mother's tears and the idea of obey the parents, and I'll go back to the Bible, you know. So you have some wayward child that is feels intimidated, feels that he must go the right way. And I get every single year, I get a call from a parent thanking for this poem or noting this poem because it has changed. So I remember you said about hope, that the hope is there because after teaching and reading it, there's always some introspection, especially with the boys, about this idea of listening to the instruction and the guidance of the parents. That's all I wanted to say.
God bless you, because you know sometimes I wonder why I write these things, because they're not easy to write, you know. Because when I was writing that, I was just crying. I tell you a little bit. You know, I wrote that poem. I saw after one general election. I was driving by a ministry, and I saw this little boy, this boy standing outside. Obviously, he was waiting on the politician to come. And when the man came in his big car, he ran up to him and he just run him. And I thought, I bet you before election, that's not how he was treating that little boy. And it stayed with me, and that's how that poem was born. But thank you for those words, because they make it worthwhile. Sometimes I think I shouldn't bother, but something like that really makes me know that what I do has value. Thank you.
You're
right.
welcome.
So for our last poem, which is I'm Becoming My Mother, Jordan, who says that this is one of her favorite poems, will do the reading of the poem.
Yeah, Jordan.
Excuse me. Okay.
It's also one of my favorites. Mine.
Is everybody favorite now?
I'm feeling like the girls in the class will probably relate a lot to this scene that, you know, I'm assuming this will relate most.
Maybe because like as a single child, I realized that I'm doing stuff that my mommy used to do and that she does.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Even if you don't like your mother, it happens.
Okay, can I start now?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm Becoming My Mother by Lorna Goodison. Yellow brown woman, fingers smelling always of onions. My mother raises rare blooms and waters them with tea. Her birth waters sang like rivers. My mother is now me. My mother had a linen dress, the color of the sky, and sturdy lace and damask tablecloths to pull shame out of her eye. I am becoming my mother, brown yellow woman, fingers smelling always of onions.
Lovely. Good job. Good job.
Thank you.
All right, questions? Let's do them all.
Okay.
Or I have, well, you know, if they don't, I have questions or things
All right, teach. Yeah.
prepared.
Sir,
So, oh, Chadia would definitely have a comment, right, Chadia?
sir, you, sir, you see, because remember we watched the interview
Mhm.
for this poem. So like every question I have that I want to ask her was
She answered
already
in that
asked.
already.
But yes, but I feel like I just want to hear her talk more.
All right, well, I'm going to throw something out there, and if anything, I don't know if how much time you have left with us, Miss Goodison, but
No, I'm good.
we
I'm
could
fine.
add one more poem. We could add one more poem if you have the time.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Since I'm here. Good.
The one thing that I liked about this poem as well is the eclectic vibe of the senses. I think there's a diversity of the senses that happens in here when it comes to visuals and smells and even touch, you know,
Yeah.
because the smelling of the onions is obviously very distinct. But I think the rare blooms for me is because I have sinus problems. So when I think of rare blooms and flowers, sometimes that hits my olfactory. Waters them with tea, sang like rivers. So I'm hearing things now. The linen dress, I'm feeling the linen in my hand. The color of the sky, the store lace is both visual and touch for me. And then you have the brown and yellow contrast with the color. What was it like pulling all of these senses together for you?
Well, that's one of the things I love about poetry, that you can have a poem that makes you sort of orchestrates all the five senses, you know. And that poem was born out of that scent. I remember just smelling my mother's hand, and my mother's hands always smell like onions. She was always, my mother had 9 children, so she was always cooking. So this lingering scent of onions on our hands. And sometimes that is how a poem is born. One of your senses gets triggered by something you see or you hear or you smell or you touch, and it kind of just brings on a poem, or it activates whatever it is that makes a poem. So that poem was definitely born out of smelling my mother's hands and smelling the onions and thinking, you know, my mother's hand always smell like onions.
Interesting.
And then also because my sister Barbara and I used to compare, or you know, the sort of traits we were developing as we grew older, and saying, you sound just like mama, or that is what mama would do. Or so I realized that it is very much something that happens to women. But there's another dimension to the poem, as I may or may not have mentioned, that everybody has to have a mother. That's how everybody, men and women, come into the world. And at some point, your mother gives birth to you. Is that physical birth? But for you to evolve and grow as a human being and become your true self, you have to give birth to yourself constantly throughout your life. You have to keep birthing your new self, and that's not just for women. Men and women men also have to become their own mothers to keep birthing your new and hopefully your better self.
Nice. That's an interesting take on it.
Yeah.
Jordan had a question.
Again, not really a question, but as you said, it happens. I'm sorry, I just like to talk. But
Right.
as you said, it happens a lot to me where, you know, people will say, Jordan, you're standing up just like your mommy, or you something. My dad will stop me mid-conversation and say, you spoke something just like your mother a while ago. And I will almost like feel disgusted in myself because I'm like, I don't want to sound like my mommy. I don't want to be like my mommy. I want to be my own self.
Yeah.
And so this made me feel relatable in the sense where it's not just me going through this, right? Because as you said earlier, I think somebody mentioned it earlier, that it's like we have to break the cycle, right? Where you can't, even though you see that you're becoming your mother, you still had hope. I think that's what you had said earlier, where this poem still brought hope to someone, and it does bring hope to me, because I think as I grow up, I still vow to myself that I'm not going to, pick up certain habits that my mother
We
does,
all
or
do. We all do.
certain things that she does.
Yeah.
And even where it says, finger smelling always of onions, even though I still have, certain things that may have happened, or certain, things that certain negative things mothers do, or, even fathers do, it still shows how hardworking they are and how they still should be credited. So where I think that's where the repetition of fingers smelling always of onions hit me, where even though that I don't want to become the person that she's, or I don't want to, pick up certain things that she does, I'm still going to want to pick up how hardworking she is,
Exactly, yeah.
how she does all of this hard work. And I think that's what the line fingers smelling always of onions impacted me on. And I'm wondering if that was how you, I know said it, or if that's how you depict it.
Absolutely. It's a praise song. A lot of my poems are praise songs, in that I see something or in somebody that I admire, and I want to just talk about that, And I didn't want that to ever to lose that, because can you imagine having 9 children? I mean, I don't know how did she do it? And we always, every single day of life, we had breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And she would just get up every day. I mean, she was so faithful, and she was such a wonderful human being in regards to how she just raised her children. And she would raise a lot of other people's children as well. It's as if she think 9 wasn't enough. So our house was always filled with other people's children. So I thought that was something that was worth commenting on, and it was something, I needed to commend her. I needed to praise her for that. And everything you just said is absolutely true. But it is also true that all of us need to mother or to give birth to ourselves constantly through life. You have to just keep, that birthing and rebirthing process is something that continues through your whole life.
Nice. And I do think, without going into, for my mother may inherit of her strength, I do feel that sentiment there as well, where you speak about her, that journey and meeting the father and that role the father did and all of that. It shows that strength that you speak about. But to end the session, I think while you had that blip, we brought up Mother the Great Stones Got to Move. It's a little bit longer, but do you think we have time to maybe read that and speak about it quickly?
Yeah, since we're here, let's go.
Excuse me, sir. You have quite a number of hands raised.
Yes,
Before we move on.
So sorry. This is I keep doing this. All right, go ahead, Xavier, then Daryl. Is it because it's Chadi has spoiled me? Is it because Chadi has just been jumping in and talking? I'm expecting everybody to do that. So Xavier, Daryl, and then I know that's Chadi and not Akila. So go ahead.
Okay, so greetings again. So I remember when we first did this poem, a part of the conversation from some members of the class were that this poem, it was kind of it wasn't exactly about praising per se. I don't know if anyone remembers. But when I read the poem, to me it was almost like a Grammy moment for me, because the wording of the poem it's very specific. Raises, rare blooms, and waters them with tea. That to me was like children.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Because and I remember we were talking about you can't leave the house and don't drink tea. You always have to be drinking the tea. And my mother had a linen dress, the color of the sky. I don't know if anyone can share this, but at least some mothers do have a yard dress, a
Yes.
yard shirt,
Or
a
yeah,
yard,
clothes.
a yard
Yeah,
shirt.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
That is very common, you know. So to me, it was honorable. It was honoring your mother, and like Jordan said, smelling like onions. What came to mind was that your mother was very industrious, and that would have been brought out as well in For My Mother May I Inherit Half of Her Strength.
Yeah.
So to me, when I read this poem, in the back of my mind was a comparison being done with my May I Inherit Half of Her Strength and this one.
Yeah. I think maybe and Becoming My Mother came, it may have come before For My Mother. It was kind of like the rehearsal or something, the run up, and then it, it was short and then it got really long. But everything you said, Xavier, I agree with. Yeah.
Daryl is next. Next question.
Okay, so I like the response to the question. You know, Sir mentioned it and Xavier also. When you were responding to Jordan, I felt like you were giving life to May I Inherit Half Her Strength, all the things that were in the poem you were mentioning. So my question is, other from Lovely Doris, of course, who inspired you? Earlier you mentioned that everything inspires you and inspires you to write a poem about that, but what was the first inspiration, this first part to make this your career move? You know that poetry is not normally easy to do.
No, it's not at all. You know, when I was growing up, I never knew one person was making, sort of saying you were a poet.
Yeah.
There was Louise Bennett, who was the great Louise Bennett, but I never really, I kind of just felt my way, I just allowed life to shape certain things. But what really influenced me? I don't know. You know what? When I started out, I did what I was doing because I had to do it. It sounds ridiculous, but it's true. And I didn't think I would ever get a prize or write a book, or I had no aim in view. I had no goal. I just got up every day and I just kept doing this writing. And a lot of times I did it in secret. I didn't tell anybody. I was just working. So I think it is kind of like, I keep saying I think it is my gift from God, and I've come to accept it as that. And sometimes when I get a gift, you don't even know how to explain it. So if I try to explain it, I'll maybe spoil it. I just say that it took me a long while to accept this gift because I didn't want to do it. Because from the very beginning, when I would write about some things, it would cause me a lot of pain and distress. Some early poems I wrote them. I was crying on the floor when I was writing them. So I didn't want to have to do that. But then I realized that that is what I had to do. So I kept doing it. And that's not a good answer, but that's the best answer I have. But
That's a great answer.
My sister had a big influence on me. My sister, Mrs. Gluedon, she used to be on the radio. Mrs. Barbara Gluedon.
Oh, I know Barbara Goodison. Yes, that's your
Yes,
sister?
Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, well, she had a big influence on me because she was she's a great reader. So I was very lucky that I grew up in a house where somebody read books all the time. And she read very widely and very sophisticated reading. So from the time I was very little, I started off. I know that you had to read and read avidly. And she used to bring home, magazines from the Daily Mirror from England and the Saturday Evening Post from America and Newsweek. And so I was from I was like 4 or so, I started off reading those things. And so I had that sort of strong foundation in the written word. And my mother taught me to read before I could go to school. My mother used to be a teacher of little children. So she was very good, she was a very good teacher, very imaginative teacher. So I tell you a little story. I used to want to read the comics in the paper. And then my brother started to charge me money. Like if I had any money, I had to give it to him because I couldn't read. So, I told my mother and she said, no, that is wrong. So she taught me to read before I could go to school. Every little penny I had to be given them because I wouldn't read it from me unless I paid them.
Wow.
Yeah.
Look at that. Interesting.
That sounds just like my brother. Oh gosh. I mean, it's how brothers are.
Yeah.
If you don't give a little money, and it reminds me of somebody over in the corner here. But yes.
But it made me learn to read. By the time I went to school at 4, I could read because of that. I couldn't just keep giving him every little penny I had. So my mother said no, and she taught me to read.
Nice. It's actually now 2:30, so I don't know if you want to do the last poem or if you want to call it.
No, what time do we end?
Well, the class finishes at 3. So we
do
could
you want
just,
to do the last poem really quickly?
yeah, we can do it really quickly. Chadia, you want to read it?
Are you okay with that? Or
No, sir, I can't read it because internet, but I wanted
Okay.
to say something.
All right, quickly.
Okay, I wanted to say that this poem, although I can't really relate to a lot of stuff said in there because my mom isn't traditional at all. That more relates to my grandmother, who I don't really like spend my time around. But in a way, it did relate to me because there was a lot of stuff I used to like hate about myself, like, why am I so weird? Why do I do this?
But we love you for it.
Yes, yes. But then it's funny because after we did this poem, I started like watching my mother, and like I'm like, I'm just like her. And that's when I started appreciating certain aspects about myself, because if I didn't, then that means I never loved my mother.
I think the universe set you up with that one. It says you have to love your mother no matter what, because you know why? She gave you life. Even if your mother, and I'm not saying you, even if somebody has a mother who is the worst mother in the world, you still have to love them because they gave you life. You have to love and forgive and put up with it because they gave you life. Maybe
That's
if
so true.
huh?
I used to go through it with my mom like every single day. There could not be a day at home where we would have peace. It used to always be arguments, fights, and she used to always beat me all the time. I used to come to school with bruises, and people are like, "Girl, call a CDA," and I'm like, "No, because if she gone, we're gonna take care of me. I don't have a dad. What's that? I don't know what that is, anyways."
Yeah.
So nowadays, like now that I'm grown, like I'm with my mom, we don't have arguments. It's like more like playing and talking and laughing. And
Yeah.
I'm like, such is life. You go through that aspect in life. As a teenager, your hormones are going to tell you to do stuff and disrespect parents. But there are certain things that parents do and they know why they do them, because at your age, they did the same thing and they had to go through the same thing.
Absolutely.
And so, no, I'm just like my mom in so many ways. And I thank God that I have her. And like, I now realize that my mom is my mom and my dad.
Yeah.
So I'm very grateful.
That's a beautiful thing to say. That's lovely. You must write about it because, like I say, I had to learn. I learned that too. Just she give you life, and you have to, you have to be thankful and respectful for that, no matter how weird you think she is. All right.
I think that a comparison of both mother and father is also brought in. Mother speaks to the man who
Yes,
employed her son.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of women are the mother and father. And, that famous book by Dr. Edith Clark, My Mother Who Fathered Me.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what I think we will do to close, I will read this last poem and you can give us just one or two comments on it.
Sure.
If we have one or two questions, we do that quickly and then we kind of close,
Sure.
and then I will talk to my class just for like 5 minutes after, because I wanted to kind of just wrap it up with them. So, Mother, the great stones got to move. Mother, one stone is wedged across the hole in our history and sealed with blood wax. In this hole is our side of the story, exact figures, head counts, burial artifacts, documents, lists, maps, showing our way up through the stars, lockets of brass containing all textures of hair clippings. It is a half that has never been told. Some of us must tell it. Mother, There is the stone on the hearts of some women and men, something like an onyx. Cabochon cut, cabochon cut, which hung on the wearer's seeds bad dreams, speaking for the small dreamers of this earth, plagued with nightmares, yearning for healing dreams. We want that stone to move. Upon an evening like this, mother, when one year is making way for another, in a ceremony attended by a show of silver stars, mothers see the moon, milk-fed, herself a nursing mother, and we think of our children and the stones upon their future, and we want these stones to move. For the year going out came in fat at first, but towards the harvest it grew lean, and many mouth corners gathered white, and another kind of poison, powdered white, was brought in to replace what was green, and death sells it with one hand, and with the other death's palms are gone. Then death gets death's picture in papers asking, where does all this death come from? Mother, stones are pillars, for the homeless sleep on the concrete sheets. Stone flavors soap. Stone is now meat. The hard-hearted giving our children stones to eat. Mother, the great stones over mankind got to move. It's been 10,000 years we've been watching them now, from various points in the universe, from the time of our birth as points of light, in the eternal coiled workings of the cosmos. Roll away stone of poisoned powders come, to blot out the hope of our young. Move stone of sacrificial lives we breed, to feed to tribalistic economic machines. From across the pathway to Mount Morning site of the rose quartz fountain, brimming anise and star water, bright fragrant for our children's future. Mothers, these great stones got to move.
Good job, Simon. Thank you.
No problem, no problem. All right, so just a general comment on this poem. It's so powerful, you know? Talk to us about it.
So, you know, when you read the news or you just I think I wrote that poem in the 80s, I think. And you were just thinking about the magnitude of all the problems in the world compared to compared to what is going on now. It was easy. But sometimes there's just so little you can do as a human being. And that's one of the jobs of, you know, poets and artists. At least you can use your imagination to try and, you know, see if you can lift off some of this weight that is just bearing down on humanity. And Mother the Great Stones Got to Move is a revival song. It's one of those traditional, I don't know if it's revival or Pocomania or one of those sects, but they sing that song at those services. You've heard it. You've heard the song.
Yeah, man. Miss Dare brought it up.
Yes, man, and Country Night. I told him at the Country Night.
That's right. Okay, there you go. So, and if you're thinking about how it functions at a Country Night, is to lift up the weight of heaviness of the people who are mourning. So I mean, that is what everything I do, I write has some function. I'm not just writing down something to be writing it down. So I chose that hymn because it has that effect that is trying to lift up the weight of humanity. And then, you know, it just started tumbling out in that way. It spoke about history and, you know, always said, yeah, and that's another song that, you know, what about the half that's never been told? Mm-hmm. That song, that line appears in a number of Jamaican songs. What about the half that has never been told? Because there is a half that has never been told. If you read history books, our side of the story is not really in it. Sure. So that is what that poem is saying. You know, we need to start talking about our half. And I think this is happening now. What with Black Lives Matter in the States and so on, there's a lot more emphasis now being placed on our side of the story. So, you know, even when I was writing that in the 1980s, I couldn't see that coming, but I was hoping that one day more and more of our side of the story would come out. I think about, like I said, I think about slavery a lot and what our people went through. And the fact that if we are here at all of us, every single one of you, the beautiful young people and your wonderful teachers here, that we're here at all is a miracle, you know. When you look at what enslaved people went through to come here in those slave ships,
That's
and
true.
what we endured on those plantations. It's not Superman, it's Superman, you know, it's weird Superman and Superwoman. The fact that we're alive, that meant that our ancestors were able to, you know, survive those
Survive and give us
things.
space to be here.
Yes. And exactly, it's every day we should look at it and say, my God, I mean, these are amazing people. So all of my writing, and much of it is very much concerned with, especially having young people to think about ourselves in this way, that we are descended from some mighty, powerful people, people who had no power in the eyes of the world, but who were at that level of that kind of endurance, that kind of, you know, anyway, if I start, I won't stop. So I have to stop now. But the other thing I always think about, you see, is that in a lot of the books, they always emphasize that on plantations, that the enslaved people were always selling out one another or selling out the massa. And that's what you see in the books. But if you think about it, them friendship and loyalty must have been the paramount virtues in those society for enslaved people. Otherwise, we wouldn't have made it. People must have been the best, strongest relationships with one another. They must have just been helping and holding up one another constantly, or we would never have made it. At least that's what I think, and that's what I am trying to put in all my work. Does that answer what I mean? Address what you're saying?
Very, very much. I mean, I wanted you to kind of speak about the impact of this poem, and it's very deep. I mean, there are so many things that could be dissected in this poem, but it does come down to that overall idea that these stones had to be moved, and the only way these stones could be moved is through that camaraderie, through the power of the people of this time.
Yes.
It's a time where the power was so minimal. You understand? Like what they could and couldn't do.
Yeah.
You know.
You know, historians refer to in the condition of being enslaved as social death. And
Right.
if you think about it, socially, you don't own your name, you don't own your children, you don't live anywhere. Not even the clothes that you have on belong to you.
Yeah.
So that's social death. And yet people were able to come out of that and to give birth and to, you know, to make us be here. It's an amazing thing.
Definitely. Jordan has a question, and then Miss Bear.
No, I think Miss Bear put up her hand first.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. Okay, I just want to say two quick things. Whenever I teach this poem, I always remember Epitaph by Dennis Scott. And because we do an echo in the bone, I refer to it because I said Epitaph spoke about the fact that, you know, these slaves, they didn't have anything to remember them. And this poem for me gives us this strength, this power. Said, when you said the half has never been told, I've always said to them, and I would read the poem Epitaph and I would go back to this and say, this poem is very powerful because it reminds us of our heritage, that look here, we come from somewhere, we have a purpose, no matter what is happening. So I think it really gives us this special point. It's one of my favorite poems. And I also think about the fact that all the stones that we go through. I love your poems because we do a lot of historical review when we're doing a poem like Mother the Great Stone for the revival songs, to the things that happen in history. And I think that is what it does for me. It reminds me greatly of Epitaph, that look here, we really have a past, we really have this history, this rich history. And finally, whenever I have students wasting time, I always say, you know how much thing Paul Bowl, because I'm from St. Thomas, go through, so that a black girl like me can come teach a class and you're wasting time or wasting money. That's one of my favorite sayings.
That is so brilliant. Yes, it's true. When you think about what they got through, yes. And endure. Good on you to tell them that. Thank you for saying that. Thank you.
All right, Jordan, go ahead.
Okay, I wanted to ask or talk about, I think where you felt so strongly about the culture also, and I know you're trying to spread our culture and our history and, you know, all the hardships that we've been through and spread knowledge of this. But I think it's mainly about ignorance of so many different students. And what I realized in my life when I chose to do history in fourth and fifth form, and I said, okay, I want to do history, I didn't realize how much of an impact the subject would actually have on me, where in these discussions, I tend to talk a lot because when you're actually learning about these things, rather than just the the general knowledge that, yeah, we went through slavery, we did these certain things, you know, we are trying to get out of it, certain things like that. I think it's harder when you actually research what actually happened to us, where we don't even know the half of it. And really and truly, some of these things is probably just half of what we went through. These research things, I mean, a lot of the things that we see online are whitewashed, as some people may say, and prettied up, because it's not the reality of what actually happened to us.
Exactly.
And I think even where the mother, where you bring up the mother, you know, these great stones need to go, and where I realized that the poem shifted, where you said we, and it felt as if you were including yourself.
Oh, yes.
And it felt as if you felt how they were feeling, and you felt the passion, and you felt like I have a responsibility to bring through this knowledge. So I like the switch of the perspective in the poem, where you weren't only just talking for them, but you added yourself to the equation.
Mhm. Thank you. Thank you very much for that. Yeah.
All right, this was really good. I actually think I'm going to stop it here, and I'm going to thank you very much.
Sir, wait, please.
I'm going to invite everyone in the class to open mics and tell Ms. Goodison thank you. Just thank you for coming.
Excuse me,
Other
sir.
question.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Nice.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.